Vancouver Island's southern coastline, serene beauty and incredible cityscapes, tracing an international marine boundary, awe-inspiring lighthouses.
This is Fiskard Lighthouse. It's the oldest permanent lighthouse on the west coast of Canada.
Natural marine wonders.
Seaweeds are one of those fabulous organisms here in the ocean that is quite ancient.
And man-made marvels.
The sunken garden, it's the one they come around a corner and go, wow, when they see it laid out in front of them.
Now, we reveal the coastlines like never before, unlocking the secrets of our maritime past, present, and future. Canada, over the edge. On the west coast of Vancouver Island, Carmana Point Lighthouse marks the entrance to Juan de Fuca Strait. The international waterway dividing Canada from the United States. The site of hundreds of shipwrecks, Juan de Fuca Strait had been infamous to mariners as far back as the 1850s. With a lighthouse already operating on Washington State's Cape Flattery, and with new trade routes emerging from China and Japan, the 1891 construction of a station here ensured safe passage along this marine boundary. "20 kilometers southwest, Port Renfrew marks a rare human presence along this far-removed stretch of Canada. The tiny town sits in an inlet known as Port San Juan, nestled behind scenic San Juan Point. Around the point, to the southeast, Juan de Fuca Provincial Park lies ahead. It is a rugged West Coast masterpiece. Home to marine life and seabirds. The warm climate and high precipitation make this the perfect setting for some of Vancouver Island's most impressive forests. Featuring massive western hemlock, western red cedar, Douglas fir, and Sitka spruce. On the shoreline, spectacular sea caves stretch more than 20 kilometers. At Sheringham Point Lighthouse, built 100 years ago, civilization returns. This is the town of Souk, home to just over 10,000 people, the westernmost community along Vancouver Island's southern coast. This town is quickly becoming known as a tourist and recreation destination. Souk residents also carry a strong connection to the open waters beyond, harvesting its rich, unique resources.
Many people know Victoria as a city of gardens, and as I like to tell people is that I have the wildest garden on the West Coast. I'm standing here on Whiffen Spit in Souk, British Columbia, the west coast of Vancouver Island. Right behind me is the Juan de Fuca Strait and the beginning of the outer coast. The Juan de Fuca Strait is big, broad, and wide, and way over my right shoulder, you are looking into the Olympic National Park of the United States. Seaweeds are one of those fabulous organisms here in the ocean that is quite ancient, evolutionary-wise, 600 million to 1 billion years of age. Seaweed is an algae that grows here. We have about 700 different species on this coastline, and it is the precursor of all land plants. So we harvest the wild seaweeds from this coastline, and we design and manufacture over 40 different skincare products for the spa industry, and we sell these products now worldwide. Our seaweeds are actually USDA certified organic, and we're the only company in the world to have that for seaweeds. What I have here is the fastest growing plant on the planet, period. It's our fabulous Nereocystis. It's known as the giant bull kelp, and it weighs a ton, and it looks like this. It's fabulous. It's clean, it's fresh, and I'm still holding it up over my head, and it's still trailing way behind me on both sides. This particular seaweed starts to grow on December 21st, no joking. Seaweeds are linked to the tilt of the earth towards the sun. So on the winter solstice, they start to grow. We harvest this seaweed in August. We're just finishing up now. And it can be a fabulous 35 meters in length. They don't have a stem or bark like a plant. This one here has a huge, big, long stipe, almost like a snake. And it's the flexible part of the seaweed that gets it up into the ocean, so it takes its nutrients directly in. One of the most unique things about seaweed are the nutrients that they hold, the vitamins that they carry, the minerals that they have. People often ask me, well, why are seaweeds so healthy? And the crux of it is right here. Seaweeds are some of the healthiest plants on the planet. Clean oceans mean clean seaweeds, high nutrients, minerals, and unique compounds. But seaweeds do not have a root system. It's right here. They have holdfasts only. So they're not breaking down nutrients from a soil. They are attached to rocks. There it goes. And from this holdfast rises these fabulous seaweeds directly into the ocean, and they take their nutrients directly from the ocean. So that's how they're so unique and different from land plants. Here's another kelp. Kelps generally refer to brown seaweeds. And look at this one. It's like a clothesline. And you have the big, long stipe at the top, and you have the fronds attached to one. And if you take a close look at them, seaweeds are more like fabric. This is our Seaflora Seaweed Center. We now bring our seaweeds in here where we process them. We take our seaweeds after we've harvested them, and depending on the type of seaweed, we will either, press it, cold press it, juice it, grind it, blend it. With our seaweeds, we work with the whole plant. We maintain the fiber. We want to keep the richness of it. The standard seaweed extract in the world market today is white, bleached, and doesn't have vitamins or minerals in it. This means for us is that our products that we create from our wild seaweeds are rich and varied in their colors, in their textures, and in their purposes. So we really like to take advantage of that beautiful wild resource out there and minimally treat it to make some very interesting products.
Beyond the town of Souk, spectacular coastline continues on approach to the southernmost region of Vancouver Island. This is Race Rock's lighthouse, named for the dangerous tidal waters of Juan de Fuca Strait that stream past this rocky outcropping each day. Race Rocks predates Canada itself, built by the British government in 1860. Its unique black and white design is a gift from the mind of the station's first keeper, to stand out against a shoreline shrouded in fog 45 days a year. At 24 meters high, it is the only stone lighthouse in British Columbia, built of granite quarried in Scotland and sandstone from Gabriola Island to the north. The lighthouse and adjacent foghorn are surrounded by a rich ecological reserve, protecting sea life, including elephant seals and sea lions, who make this a regular port of call. Race Rocks is one of two iconic lighthouses built by the British. Its sister station, Fiskard, sits on Vancouver Island, just miles away.
We're right at the southern tip of Vancouver Island. This is the oldest permanent lighthouse on the west coast of Canada. It was built, it's actually older than Canada if you think about it, built in 1860, so during the colonial period. And it stood here for over 150 years, marking the entrance to Esquimalt Harbor, the way towards Victoria, and a number of safe anchorages in between. The lighthouse really does symbolize the growth of the west coast of Canada, and Victoria in particular. With the growth of Esquimalt as a naval port and Victoria as a commercial port, we started to see an enormous growth in shipping traffic on the west coast. And of course, to help those ships coming in and out of our ports, we needed a system of lighthouses, and Fiskard is the first in that series. The tower sits about 100 feet above the water, right? Kind of giving that light at the top can be seen approximately 12 miles out to sea on a clear day. It used to be a kerosene lantern at the top, and now it is electric, but it is still functioning today, 152 years after its construction. Fiskard Lighthouse does mark the entrance to Esquimalt Harbour, which is the home of Canada's Navy on the west coast. So for a sailor heading out, it's most likely one of the last Victorian landmarks that they see on their way out to sea, but it's most likely a welcome sight on the horizon as they make their way back into Esquimalt Harbour on their way home. It's definitely one of the most photogenic sites in the area, and a lot of people see the lighthouse, even a lot of people who haven't even been here, see the lighthouse as a symbol of not just the West Shore area, but of Victoria. But it really does represent the connection between Victoria and the ocean.
Adjacent to Fiskard Lighthouse is Fort Rod Hill National Historic Site, a building block in Western Canada's military legacy and a 19th century symbol of Canada's move to independence.
As we say, come for Fiskard Lighthouse, but stay for Fort Rod Hill. Fort Rod Hill is really the high watermark of the British Empire because this is one of the last forts of its type built by the British anywhere in the world. The British began using Esquimalt Harbour in the 1840s, but they didn't build anything ashore until the Crimean War in the 1850s. And Fort Rod Hill, as I say, was constructed in the 1890s as a permanent solution to the problem of coast defense in this area. Some of the areas around here are built to be defended for up to a period of several days. We're surrounded by concrete walls that have what they call loopholes in them, and they're designed to fire your rifles from, so that if you are attacked, you can slam the gates shut and defend yourself from an enemy attack force. Fort Rod Hill is composed of 3 separate gun batteries. There's an upper and a lower and a place called Belmont Battery. And there were 2 large caliber guns mounted here in Lower Battery. They could fire a 45 kilogram shell up to a distance of about 7.5 kilometers. And they were designed to attack large enemy ships like a cruiser or so on. Belmont had smaller, fast-firing guns that could take on things like torpedo boats. The British were worried about sneaking into the harbor and attacking our vessels. There's no particular worry here from malaria and things like that, so it was a pretty good station to be posted to. World War I was definitely one of the big high points in the history of this station here, because the British had actually left Esquimalt just before that in 1906, and in 1910 Canada's Navy was established. So in World War I we had taken responsibility for our own defense, so Fort Rod Hill was really prepared for an attack at that time. Part of our program here at Fort Rod Hill National Historic Site is we try and show the whole gamut of the fort's history from the 1890s right up until the 1950s. And we actually have a unique piece of Canadian history which we demonstrate here for people. It's a Second World War Bren light machine gun. And we're actually going to see one of our staff demonstrating for you, firing blank ammunition, of course, the World War II Bren gun. We'll see him load it up and actually put rounds in the chamber and fire off the Second World War Bren gun. It's the only place in Canada you can see this.
Today, the military legacy of Fort Rod Hill carries on. In neighboring Esquimalt, where a military installation has stood for more than 150 years, it is the base of operations for Canada's Western Naval Fleet. Esquimalt is home to more than 4,000 military personnel, working here and abroad. And Esquimalt is a gateway to scenic beauty. Victoria, British Columbia. This is the provincial capital and the hub of southern Vancouver Island. Home to the First Nations Salish peoples for thousands of years, the Victoria region was first encountered by European explorers in the late 1700s. It remained a small outpost until the 19th century, when the Fraser River Gold Rush pushed the population from just a few hundred to more than 5,000 people, almost overnight. Victoria, previously known as Camosun, Fort Albert and Fort Victoria, was incorporated as the City of Victoria in 1862. Today, the region is home to 350,000 people, a destination for 3.5 million tourists each year. They are drawn here by Victoria's favorable climate and historic charm, seen in spectacular turn-of-the-century gems like the Empress Hotel and British Columbia's legislative buildings, completed in 1897. These symbols of Victoria's past front onto a bustling modern harbor. Finally, Victoria's most notable feature may be its gardens, giving the city a reputation of maintaining a bit of old England. Gardens thrive in the city, but nowhere more so than historic Butchart Gardens.
Butchart Gardens is located on the southern tip of Vancouver Island, very close to the city of Victoria and in Canada's warmest spot. We get a fair bit of rain here, so we've got really good growing conditions, but we get very mild temperatures in the winter, sometimes no snow at all, other times a little bit. And then through the summer, very mild temperatures for the most part. Butchart Gardens began with Jenny Butchart, who decided years ago when she looked down at her husband's depleted limestone quarry that she really wanted to do something better for it than just to leave it depleted. So she had wagon loads and wagon loads of topsoil brought in here, filling it up to about 1.5 to 2 feet deep of topsoil, and then started planting. She planted for over the years. Her friends encouraged her, and the garden grew. She expanded it until now there's 55 acres covered with more than 700 varieties of plants. We plant 300,000 bulbs for every spring as well. So it's now a huge operation, and I'm sure the dear old lady had no idea when she did it how large it was going to become. The Japanese garden was Jenny's first garden, and that was the one that allowed them to walk from their boat at the foreshore where they had a wharf, and they could walk up and bring their friends up through the Japanese garden to the house. Butchart Gardens, though, itself really began when the sunken garden was put in. That was the time when it really pitched over from being a small garden that belonged to Jenny Butchart herself, and then became the larger garden called Butchart Gardens. The sunken garden is a large garden. It's the one that people would recognize the most. It's the one they come around a corner and go, wow, when they see it laid out in front of them. What's known now as the Italian garden began its day as a tennis court. They decided as they grew older that they needed to do something else with it, and one of their friends drew out on a napkin the idea of it becoming an Italian garden. We also have the rose garden, which is extremely popular in the summer months, with more than 300 varieties of roses. Butchart Gardens started with a very small operation with just a few people doing a few things, and it grew through the years to become a commercial operation. But we now have, in the summertime, about 550 staff. 50 of those are gardeners, 50 to 55. So it's a very, very busy operation, and one of the largest in Canada as a privately owned operation.
Heading north, we trace the contours of Saanich Peninsula along the protected waters of Saanich Inlet and Satellite Channel Ecological Reserve. At Swartz Bay, the marine transportation link for the region is a non-stop operation, with ferries connecting Vancouver Island and the city of Vancouver and the Gulf Islands nearby. To the north and east of Swartz Bay and Saanich Peninsula, some of the West Coast's most serene and natural settings lie in plain view. This is Sydney Island, known as the Jewel of the Gulf. Sydney Island's northern shoreline features Sydney Spit Marine Park, more than 400 acres of protected area, including a rich lagoon and sand spit. further, and perhaps the most famous Gulf island, Salt Spring. It was the first to be settled by the Coast Salish First Nations thousands of years ago, then by 19th century pioneers from Europe, Hawaii, and African Americans fleeing slavery in the South. Today, at 182 square kilometers, it is the largest Gulf island and the most populated. 10,000 residents make up an eclectic culture here. Farmers, winemakers, and a world-famous artist colony. Along the southwest shore of the island lies Mount Maxwell Provincial Park. With meadows, old-growth Douglas fir, and the largest undeveloped estuary of all the Gulf Islands. From high above, Baines Peak offers spectacular vistas of the surrounding coastlines. Next, across Trincomalee Channel, Galiano Island makes up the backbone of the Gulf Islands. More than 27 kilometers long and an average of 3 kilometers wide, it divides the chain from the open waters of the Strait of Georgia. Galiano is home to an abundance of animal life, including hundreds of bird species. The northern tip of the island is marked by Porlier Pass Lighthouse and Dionisio Point Provincial Park, with sandy beaches, rocky points, and a stunning tidal lagoon. The island, named in honor of Spanish explorer Dionisio Alcala Galiano, features a network of hiking trails, from inland forests to miles of sandstone and pebble beaches. From the serenity of the Gulf Islands, another symbol of Vancouver Island lies in the distance. Pulp and paper has been produced here in Crofton for decades. With 3 paper machines and 2 pulp machines, the facility produces more than 205,000 tons of newsprint each year. Employing more than 500 workers, it is just one example of the key role natural resources play in the economy of the region. Not far from British Columbia's capital city, Victoria, a West Coast refuge lies just out of sight. It is British Columbia's newest national park, the Gulf Islands National Park Reserve. A rich palette of islands, meadows, hills, and headlands set in a spectacular body of water known as the Salish Sea.
The Gulf Islands are a little gem in between Vancouver and Victoria, and they're right along the US border. Altogether, it's about 35 square kilometers, and that's both the on-land areas and also the marine areas. In many parts of the park, you actually are looking out on the ocean onto the markers that mark the US border. If you were to look at a map, you'd see that the border here actually zigzags up and down. So the islands, American and Canadian islands, are sort of all immersed together in this one unique area.
The Southern Gulf Islands, here where the National Park Reserve is, has a number of larger islands. They have communities on them. Saturna and Pender and Maine are pretty large islands close to the Strait of Georgia. And then there's a number of smaller islands. The whole place is encompassed by the Salish Sea. So really, it's like there's no border at all sometimes. For thousands of years, people have come to the Gulf Islands, and our archaeological record shows that First Nations history stretches back 13,000 years. And this place is still very important and continued to be used by the Coast Salish today. And back in the mid-1800s, the British, Central Canadians, and Northern European settlers came to Homestead. They were soon followed by Kanaka people, which were Hawaiian, Chinese, and Japanese people. So all of these groups helped to make up the rich cultural mosaic.
There's a number of different ecosystems that we protect in the park, and they support a lot of different species, including sea lions, seals, migratory songbirds, and also a really special ecosystem called the Garry Oak ecosystem. And we've actually won international recognition for some of our work to restore it. It's known for really gnarly old oak trees and then floral meadows that tend to surround it. Because we're an island, a lot of our park is along the coastline, and in those intertidal areas, while our visitors might enjoy the beaches, we are really interested in protecting the eelgrass meadows, which are just on the edge of the waterline, and they're sort of the nurseries of the ocean. That's where young fish often thrive, and different species of crustaceans get their start.
Of course, marine transportation has always been an important element and critical to connecting communities and the islands, and it still is today. The First Nations people called this their highways, the waterways here, and it's still important. And today you can see a hustle bustle of ferries and sailboats, powerboats crossing the international border and coming through. It's a very interesting place to be.
The Gulf Islands definitely do have an international reputation for being a really peaceful and beautiful place. When we look at our visitors, most of our visitors come from BC, especially since we're so close to Vancouver and Victoria. People know they can hop on a ferry and feel like they've been transported far away from the two cities. We also get a lot of visitors from the States. Because we're so close to the border, it's a really quick boat ride up. So people like to sail up here to Canada, and we get a real mix of Albertans, BC residents, and Americans. I think my favorite place would probably be Saturna Island. There's a place called East Point, and when people go there, they can take in great sunset interpretive programs, and they can also do a little bit of whale watching just by staying on shore. It's a great place for the southern resident killer whale, which is an endangered species. So when you're there, you're almost guaranteed to see a seal. Often you can hear the sea lions barking. if you're lucky, you'll see dolphins or killer whales jumping. It gives people that really sacred experience.
From remote Carmanah Point Lighthouse at the western extremity of our journey to the bustle of BC's capital city, Victoria and the surrounding region, the southern coast of Vancouver Island recounts a human legacy of exploration and independence. It is the world's longest undefended border. Yet here, something deeper is revealed in the wonders of the waters beyond. A mosaic of natural life without borders. Here on the edge of Canada.